I've been working on understanding what a Griptape workflow might look like within production, and kind of working out, it's kind of mapping out how I imagine, a studio would like to operate, having a more dedicated AI and VFX supervisor publishing out like the workflows that then artists would use at a departmental level. So, there'll be someone that works in a higher level here, and then they create a bunch of different workflows that can be assetized and sent to ShotGrid essentially. And then when you get into, say, Nuke or whatever other application you need, they would just be sending the prompt information to those, or the input information, and getting the output, not necessarily actually getting into the Griptape nodes type environment to operate. So with that in mind, I've kind of got an infrastructure idea about like how a studio might want to operate within that. You've got the supervisors working within Griptape nodes, and then you've got the artists working in a kind of headless execution type world. And they work where they're just queuing something up against a bunch of engine instances that either go to like Docker or local or server information. And then they can publish and retrieve information from ShotGrid as well. And that all goes to your centralized workflow repository, so a way to publish in and retrieve workflows. So I built out kind of a mock UI, and I know that there was some talks about projects and all of that kind of stuff just recently. And I like kind of the direction it's going. So this could be something as an extension to that, but this is more of a hook into ShotGrid/Flow, where you work in the way that a lot of studios will work, where if you save out a workflow, that could be considered an asset that is applied to particular shots or particular characters as actual assets at a side. So you can have the workflows linked to your actual asset. And then, I mentioned a lot of kind of templating things here. I'd imagine in a world where you're publishing to and from ShotGrid, you would actually get a templated system that has defined outputs, and then you do your workflow within that. So it's very clean going up and back. Basically, you work in a kind of group that says this is what the workflow content is. And it always has the same end flows and things like that. And you just publish that back upstream to ShotGrid. But where that comes into how it would work within Nuke is, and this could work with other DCCs, and I'll jump into kind of this. I've actually got some of this operational, so I'll show you that in a moment. You get into your context within Nuke. I've built out a way to talk to ShotGrid using our new multi-shot workflow. So this actually uses the Python callbacks to talk to ShotGrid and gives you the ability to load up a new scene from ShotGrid and then bring in content from the workflows. I have built out a workflow node parser. And what that does is it can take any workflow as long as there is a start flow and an end flow. And I've built out a map of what a start flow looks like when it's got certain parameters in it. So if it has text in it, it knows to build a gizmo that has text input. But if it has an image in, it knows that it needs to have a link into that node with an image. So you can basically add any workflow to that then, and the gizmo will operate the same way. So you can see I kind of show here that I've got a workflow here with the group that has the content in it. But where this gets interesting is you can actually then run your workflows and send it to a queuing system that I also built. So I'll show this actually in operation in a sec. So you could actually have a huge Nuke script with multiple interlinking pieces that actually know the dependencies as well. So if this doesn't have the information like an image, it'll actually sit and wait in the queue while the other things generate. Or if you want to do multiple generations, it'll actually queue all of those up in here and then show them within the Nuke node. And one of the really frustrating parts of working in a studio, and especially around Nuke, is a lot of artists will just bring in read nodes with a lot of content, right? And at some point, you have to deliver that to the client. So you have to go through and clean all of your scripts. I've built a gizmo that basically says if you click lock, you're now saying that's a publishable affair. So it will remove all of the other generations, not from disk, but just from the Nuke script. So you've got a clean publishable piece. And then you just publish that back upstream to ShotGrid. So this is what it looks like within here. We can jump over to our Griptape and say we're going to work on this particular test asset that I have here. And say we're going to work on art. And I don't have any versions for this. Normally I would click new or load, but I've already got a scene loaded, so we're just going to go through that. So if I expand this, you can see there's nothing in here at the moment. This is actually me just going and loading a workflow from file. What I'm going to do is open up this one, and you can see instantly I've got a new node. But if we double click on one of these, you can see that the inputs are passed to have these parameters to go into it. And you can see I've got a run workflow system here. I'm not going to run this because it takes a little while, because I want to show just the dependency system with this. I'm going to jump this to here, and then I'm going to jump this to here, and then I'm going to double click on this and say, okay, we know we don't have any input at the moment. Let's run this workflow. What that's going to do is it's going to sit here saying waiting for this particular one while it goes and runs this one. And you can see in my queuing system, I've got all the logs and things showing what's going on. So basically, we're just waiting for this one to come through. Once that's done, it'll actually queue up this one. Let's jump over to our viewer so we can actually see it come up. And now I actually have specific generations that I can jump between, keeping it all clean inside of an actual node itself. If I were to do multiple, which would take probably too long for my demo, if I were to click lock, it would clean those out. You can also then have versioned workflows as well, because it's quite common that maybe something was generated with a particular seed for a particular use, and then someone else has used another workflow somewhere downstream, so to be capable of going back and replicating after the fact. All right. And then this segues into the other thing that I've created, which will you'll see display on screen in a moment, which is a workflow that does a creative review. Now, it's not a creative review that you can use as gospel, but what it does is it can actually help artists kind of improve their work. It's built so that it understands the image and then will give you some feedback on maybe ways you can improve. So in this scenario, it's isolated that, you know, let's have a look at the key light vector. Maybe we want to remove this stray salt. Yeah, in fact, why is the salt there? All right. And maybe there's too much light wrap on this particular piece here. So this actually goes through multiple stages. It took about 1 minute, but it goes through multiple stages where it isolates the image, understands kind of the language and what needs to be looked at in a creative review, and then goes and annotates over it with text prompts. I also have a version of this that can actually take audio and then convert that into this as well, but it's not, it's able to take very kind of standard audio, like, oh, I'm not too sure about this beaver in the corner, right? And then it's going to go, oh, well, like it'll maybe say, look into the characterization of this particular element. So I see this kind of improving workflows where it's not so much artistic, but actually helping people improve their art.